Welcome to Presently Presents.
Taking that kind of energy into all my auditions of actually just turn up and be you, and that's okay, and booking a lot of work off the back of it as well, which is fantastic. Every day at work you're auditioning for the next job.
Hey everyone, it's your guest host Ceyda Uzun. Today I am joined by Marcus Ramtohul, who is a presenter, musician, actor, model and life coach. He's doing the most. He'll be sharing some of his career highlights from CBBC presenting to his Dope Black Dads podcast and how to present your most authentic self to the camera. Hey Marcus, welcome to Presently Presents. We've already been chatting, haven't we?
We have.
So let's just hit record and just get going with it, because I've been so excited to talk to you and get to know a bit about what you do, because you don't just do presenting, do you? You're a musician, you're a model, you're doing the most. So I just wanted to start by getting to know you, what you're up to and your journey into the industry.
Sure, gosh. So yeah, as you said, presenter, model, musician, very recently podcaster as well. We were talking some tech before we started hitting record about this world of podcasting, and it's still very fresh for me as well. Journey wise, I suppose we have to go back to me being a musician, and I was late into my love of music. I we're growing up, didn't really listen to much music, like the radio be on in the background and stuff. But it wasn't until I was in my teens and I discovered punk rock where I was like, oh my gosh, this is really moving me, and that opened up loads of other rock and roll for me. So all genres of rock I just fell in love with, and eventually, as you do in high school, I joined a band. Went and bought my first bass guitar.
Very camp rock of you.
Yeah. Well, actually, where I went to school, I grew up in Romford, and Romford had a huge UK garage scene at the time. And, well, it still does, I suppose, but it was massive in the 90s. And I was a bit of an anomaly, and me and my other friends were a bit of an anomaly because we were the only kids that liked rock and roll. So between the four of us, we were like, well, if you play bass and you play drums and if you play guitar and I sing...
Oh my God, that's so convenient.
Yeah. So that was our first band, and actually the kind of remains of that band became the band that I played with for well past 10 years, called The Council. And a few different drummers along the way, lots of gigging, lots of touring, and kind of about halfway through that journey, because you're in that kind of creative industry, I was meeting people who were like, oh, you ever thought about modelling? And then I had this sudden realisation by speaking to these same people. I said, well, how do I get into modelling? Like, yeah, you just got to put yourself out there, man. Like, yeah, but how? Oh, you just got to put yourself out there. And I was like, what does this mean? And I spent a while kind of trying to figure that out and pursuing that, and eventually signed.
So what did that mean? What did that end up meaning for anyone that's like, how do I put myself out there? Like, what? Where do I start?
So for anyone who is listening, I'll skip to the end, because what I found was the only way to really get yourself out there was to go and see agents, go and see agencies. So with technology, things have changed. This was 15 years ago. But back then, most reputable agencies would have, usually it was a Wednesday afternoon, they'd have a walk-in session where they basically say, you come into the agency anytime between 2 and 4 on a Wednesday, and we'll say yes or no, we want to sign you or whatever. And, I went out kind of I think it's about 6 weeks worth of going to different agencies every Wednesday afternoon and showing my face and saying, hey, what do you think? And then lots of agents saying, you're too old, you're too short, nope, we've got too many people who look like you on our books. No, we don't really have people who look like you on our books.
A bit brutal, isn't it?
Do you know what? So I tell people this, and I say, it's my key advice if you do want to get into the industry. If the agency has an open walk-in, yes, you can apply online now, but actually you need to have that experience, because that's the job. Most of my job is walking into a room and getting rejected.
That's so true though,
Yeah.
It's just about being there. Is that specifically with modelling, or is that with presenting as well?
I think by the time I'm booked on most presenting jobs, it's usually a lot of repeat clients and clients who've kind of got me in front of someone else, so less so that, but still happens. Often, I've got a client who I work with who really likes working with me, but of course they're commissioned by whoever is paying them on a particular project. So it's really funny. I see them, every few months, like, oh, can you audition for this? And I'm like, but you know me, we've worked together. But it's so that their client.
Just skip that part.
Yeah.
You know my skills, like.
But I think it's the same for both. Certainly in modelling, and certainly my earlier experience of it was that it was that brutal, and you've got to be okay with that, because that's going to be what you do for the rest of your career, is walk into rooms and have people look you up and down and go, nah.
That's so true. You really do have to grow a thick skin, and I feel like that's what's quite hard. It's building resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, and something that you do, which I saw a little bit about, was that you're also a life coach. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Gosh, you have
So-
done your research.
I have to. I nearly knocked the earphone out my ear. But yeah, do you want to talk a bit about that as well? Is that something that you developed alongside, I guess, to like help build that encouragement in people?
So, funnily enough, alongside all of that work in music, modelling, even presenting, right up until about 5 years ago, I was still working a full-time job. I was working full-time in local authority. I was managing children's centres and public libraries. I was managing lots of buildings, lots of staff, lots of volunteers, and actually I really loved it. And I still do work with that same local authority still, just because I'm so passionate about that side of things, and I get to stretch my coaching skills and training skills and use those. But part of my kind of journey into management was a load of kind of compulsory managers training, and it was all very kind of boring and like, oh gosh, I just want to get out there and do some work, and a lot of our work was out in the community, and there I was sitting in a classroom being trained, and I had one trainer, her name was Ruth, who was just so engaging and so interesting, and she mentioned she was a life coach, and I was like, oh, I have no idea what that is, but you seem really cool, I want to know a bit more about that. And then I kind of forgot about it, and I've always been into kind of self-development and trying to kind of be better each day and be better at whatever it is. And eventually I started doing my diploma in personal development coaching. I started getting lots of clients and started kind of working in that field as well.
We've talked a little bit about your life coaching, and we've gotten into the music side of things a little bit, but what are some of your career highlights, you would say? If you had to sum yourself up in some of your favourite moments so far, what would they be?
So do you know what? I'm going to give you my highlight last, because the outside looking in, it might be incredibly cheesy. For people that don't necessarily know me and how I'm kind of here today, I'll give the kind of tick the box ones. So as you mentioned, CBeebies and CBBC. So I'm an actor in a TV show called Andy and the Band, which I got through being a musician. My audition was to play my instrument, and we play as a live band on tour as Andy and the Odd Socks, and everybody plays their instrument live. And we've played Glastonbury Festival twice now, 2017, 2022. So that's massive, huge to kind of, especially like, what is it now, 17 odd years ago, that was a dream to play that festival. So yeah, lots of kind of those moments that I never thought would be possible. But actually, to really answer your question, and it is the genuine answer, in 2017 did some live TV for CBeebies. It was something called Hospital Heroes. They used to go every year, every Christmas, to a children's hospital, broadcast live for the entire day, and run through all the different presenters, all the different acts. We did some songs on there. And then when you weren't on air, you were separated out and taken to different wards to see, the kids that were staying in the hospital. And I remember it was very, very early on. I'd been in the band for less than 6 months. We'd kind of got together around the June, just for Glastonbury that year. And then suddenly we were doing the CBeebies stuff in December. So didn't really feel like all these other kind of names and celebrities all around us. And we went round the children's burns unit, which was really harrowing. And the reaction from the children and the parents, just because we walked in the room, was, I'll never forget, was just absolutely incredible. And I was like, I'm not even anyone. Like, why'd you care? But their faces were just like beaming with hope and joy, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. The thing about live performing as well, or live presenting, is you get to have that kind of reaction immediately, and you can see people just liking what you're doing for them. Is really incredible to see. And that was a big moment.
And to feed off the energy as well.
Yeah, it was really quite something. So that's still, I think, probably my career highlights.
Yeah, that's honestly amazing. I think that there's nothing quite like actually interacting with people as well, in terms of like working with a crowd and that kind of thing. So yeah. So Marcus, you spoke a little bit about how you got to audition and use your sort of, love as a musician and then combine that with presenting, which I think is quite cool that you get to like put those different skills together with what you do. Would you say that it's important as a presenter to have these different interests and different options for yourself almost? Because I feel like that's something that I'm seeing a lot, like today, especially in order to build that more whole career. Would you say it's vital to have different skills and hobbies and
Yeah, do you know what? I think it is, but not in the way that you have to just suddenly go, oh well, everybody's a dancer and a presenter, so I better learn how to dance. I think it's really leaning into what you actually love and realizing that if you love something, other people are going to love it as well. And it's something when we're training presenters at Aspire, we talk about this a lot, bringing your genuine self to the screen. And it's very different presenting to acting, because you are saying, look, this is me, exactly me, no bells attached, like there's no persona to put on, because also if you're doing a lot of live television, you can't maintain that for any significant amount of time. You will have to just actually be yourself.
It's gonna come out. Yeah. Who you are is gonna slip at some point.
And actually embracing, I'm a huge productivity geek. Yes, I'm a life coach. Yes, I love going roller skating with my kids. It's a completely random mix of stuff, but actually that's who I am, and who somebody else is going to be just as crazy and interesting as well. And you'll be surprised. There's an account I follow on Instagram. I think she's called History Alice, and just really interesting videos. This woman is going around the country showing you these historical sites around the UK and explaining really cool random history facts about them, presenting them to the viewer in short videos. And it's unashamedly, I love British history, and it's very niche but also really cool. And there's just so much more of that now, which is great to see. And I don't think she kind of went through and went, oh, what would be really cool? What do people like? What's trending? No, she had a passion, and she's gone with that passion, and you can see that every time a video comes across. And you see that so much more, particularly in really successful social media, and social media presenting, that kind of side of presenting as well. But in all presenting, it's finding what you genuinely love. If you think about, I forget what that show's called now, the property show on Channel 4, where they go, A Place in the Sun.
Beat me to it. I didn't know it.
I should know it. So someone I used to work with as a model, Danny, she presents and has presented on it for a long time. And I don't know how widely advertised this is, but Danny and her peers on that show are actual property experts. Like, she knows property. She's always reading about, property and the markets and, how to flip houses and all that kind of stuff. And that was a genuine love she had before she went in to audition for that show. So it just shows you kind of, if you wear your kind of passions on your sleeve, what kind of doors can open up for you.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the hated phrase "unique selling point," which is what I brought up with my previous guest. This sense of like having this uniqueness, and I think it can be quite intimidating. But I really like the way that you've talked about passion, because I think that inspires people in a less intimidating way, where it's just like, okay, be yourself, be your unique, interesting self, and let those those interests kind of fuel what you do rather than what is it that makes you unique?
I said, you know, you can't keep up a kind of persona when you're presenting live or in the studio really for any significant length of time, which you might think is a detriment, but actually it's a real positive, because you can just turn up to work every day and be like, yep, this is me. And yeah, going back to kind of like that idea of you have to be used to handling rejection, something that I'm always talking about to anybody that's asking about how this industry works is, do you know what? Sometimes you are not the right person for the job. But if you've gone in as yourself and you're not the right person for the job, then there's nothing wrong with that. If you've gone in trying to be what you think is the right person for the job and you didn't get it, then that's a waste of everyone's time.
You know what? I don't know if this is a life coach in me coming up, but isn't this like relationship advice as well? Like, you know, when you date someone and it's like, you need to be yourself, you need to be authentic, because no regrets then. So apply relationships to work as well, you know?
I mean, also apply presenting to acting, modelling,
everything.
you know, just the kind of what I want. I hate the phrase "a normal career," because actually, the other kind of strength, as it were, is your job. But certainly in the beginning, is you're going to an interview 4 times a day, every day, because you're attending auditions and you're going to castings. And I remember one of my earliest big modelling jobs. It was a lot of money, and I was really nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, my agent's got me this audition, and I'd auditioned for a while and I'd booked jobs and I'd been working, but this was a big one. And I took the morning off work, went into town, went into the audition room, said hello to everyone, had a chat, and then I was kind of like, so are we going to get started? So in the audition room, usually they'll do an ident to the camera, they may ask you to play a scene, they may ask you to read a script, particularly if it's a presenting job, they might ask you to do something off the auto cue. So I'd done the kind of hellos and how are yous and stuff, and I was like, shall we do it? Shall we get on with it? And the client said, oh no, that was it. We just wanted to meet you and see what you were like, and yeah, you seem really cool, and we'll see you next Monday. So,
wow, oh my gosh.
Okay. And that was a real eye-opener for me. And then obviously when I moved into presenting, I found I was taking that kind of energy into all my auditions of actually just turn up and be you, and that's okay. And booking a lot of work off the back of it as well, which is fantastic.
So much pressure off, because it's actually really scary going into audition. I've only had to do that like once, which was years ago. It just depends what you're applying for and how you're applying for it, but I always imagine like in face auditions to be really sort of nerve-wracking, but that does take the pressure off a little bit, I think, of just be you, because you know sometimes it's just okay to just show your personality, who you are, and it's enough.
Yeah,
So
and it's interesting, this kind of since the pandemic in particular, but even before this, the rise of the self-tape audition, and I think there's a good healthy 50-50 split on people that love self-tapes and people that want to be in the room and want to have the chance to show their personality. Logistically, practically, I really like the idea that I can take my kids to school, come home, film about 5 self-tapes, go and get my kids, rather than travel into London, run around a few casting studios, not get home in time for bedtime and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's definitely something nice about being in the room. I think one advantage of being in the room is, and it's a good learning point for anybody who's still new to auditioning, is the casting director or the producer or the client, whoever it is, might say, oh, can you do that again, but do it like this? And a young or a less experienced presenter or model or actor might go, oh, I've done it wrong, and they get flustered. But actually, you've maybe not done it the way they want, but now you've got a chance to do it the way they want. Now you've got a chance to take the feedback and give another version of it. Whereas if you do a self-tape, that's the version they see. They don't know if there's another range you've got. They don't know if there's anything else you can do, or if there's any kind of intonation on a particular word they want. So that's one advantage of in-person. But like I say, the self-tape one is, the logistics are amazing because you can do so much so quickly. And I talk about this a lot. You know, people often saying, oh, you know, you work a lot and you seem to book a lot of jobs. I'm constantly doing self-tapes, and nothing's happening. And I don't know if my advice is any good or any bad, but I always say stop overthinking it. I get together, the biggest paid jobs I've done off of self-tapes and show you all it is me with a phone just talking, just be like, hey, I'm Marcus, you wanted to know this about me, this is who I am, send. There's no special effects or getting out 3 different lights to kind of make sure the lighting's absolutely on point. They know you're not in a studio. Like, just make sure you submit it on time. That's also the business part of what we do that a lot of people don't like to hear. You know what? Your job is also replying to your emails on time. Your job is turning up on time. So if somebody says, I need a self-tape by Wednesday evening, well, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to watch the football tonight. You need to get that self-tape done and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned so many interesting things there, but one thing I just want to touch upon quickly is you said something about lighting, and I'm getting a sense of like it's not necessarily about doing the most, but it's just about like bringing who you are and simplifying everything, right? And I think that's actually a really good point because like even with stuff like show reels and how you audition for things, it's more about getting it done quickly and efficiently, I think, because like you're sort of painting a picture of on a day-to-day basis there might be so many auditions, so many applications, and these auditions you're not getting paid to do. So would you say then it's more important to just be quick and efficient with it, not overthink it, because essentially they're just looking for your talent rather than how it's looking?
Yeah, I think so. And I think they are looking for your personality as well, which doesn't take, a big red camera and, a lighting rig that would rival a studio. Of course, you need to frame the video properly. Of course, you need decent lighting. But these things aren't difficult. And also, if I think about kind of the jobs where I have booked stuff off of self-tape, 2 things. The first one is I learned very quickly, if you haven't got it in the first 4 or 5, stop. It's there somewhere. You just need to choose the best one, because if you keep going, you're not going to get a better one. And then the other one is all these jobs, if I think about them, they've been really quick tapes because I've been busy doing my job. I've been on the road playing gigs or presenting or doing whatever. So when I have to do that tape, I'm like, oh, excuse me, could you mind holding this camera for me? I won't take up much of your time, but I need to just do this. And I'll do a few takes. Right, I can't take any more of your time. I'm going to have to edit this and bounce this like this. And I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10 because that's not real. It's not a genuine success ratio in our industry, I think. But more times than you realise, it does work out for you.
That's brilliant. I think you're honestly I think you're really great at really showing who you are, I think, without having to do too much. And I think that's probably like some of the best advice you could give someone is just don't overthink too much how you're presenting yourself. And we are already running out of time, but there's so much I still want to talk to you about. But one thing I wanted to quickly ask you, with all these self tapes that you've been doing and these auditions you've been getting, you mentioned that you thought having an agent early on. Is there any other platforms or ways that people can be pursuing these jobs, whether it be acting or presenting, because they are in similar fields? Are there any specific platforms like Presently?
So yeah, I think that's a really good question, because obviously Presently is a great platform, and Presently is how Dope Black Dads found me and how I've ended up in this wonderful world of podcasting.
Oh, interesting.
My colleague Catherine, who's also a trainer at Aspire, wonderful presenter, does so much work. We were working together recently for a live event, and I've never heard it put like this before, but I think she was bang on. We're in the middle of this 2-day job, and we were talking about kind of explaining to people about our work, and she said, every day at work you're auditioning for the next job, because actually if you don't turn up on time, if you don't do a really good job, if you don't make sure you get back from lunch on time, if you don't make sure you are supporting the client and showing you're there to see their vision come to life, then they may be at another company next month, or they may want you to do another piece of work in a couple of months' time. And there's so much, when people talk about networking, there's this idea that networking is getting into a room full of people and schmoozing, and my idea of networking is turn up and do your job properly, and people will remember you, and then they'll tell people about you.
don't get complacent, like you said. Like it can all, without sounding intimidating, it can all be over if you become that person that just gets used to being there and, you know, starts arriving 10 minutes late and then doing this and doing that. But that's so true. It's just, you know, show up every day and give it your best.
Yeah.
So it's the passion that feeds it ultimately. It's
Yeah.
what keeps you going.
Yeah, and I think as well, having kind of done this industry, I suppose, part-time and full-time for various lengths of time over the last 15 years, I have seen people kind of come and go, and some people might say, oh, do you know what, yeah, oh, they weren't right for it, or they gave up and blah blah. Actually, if you recognize that in yourself, then don't do it. You don't have to. No, you don't have anything to prove to anyone, but if you love it, then keep going.
That's it. And I guess we keep going naturally as long as we love something. You know, we try different things, we might stop different things, but that's how you learn about yourself as a person. And it's okay, I think, to, I don't know if give up is the right word, but it's okay to walk away
Yeah.
from something,
Yeah.
say no to something.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're already running out of time, but I just wanted to finish up really by asking you if there's anything you'd like to talk about or promote, if there's any future projects we can look forward
Oh
to
gosh.
coming out from you. I'm aware you do your podcast, don't you, on parenting?
Yes. Yeah.
If you'd like to share a little bit about that and other things you're working on that we should definitely keep an eye out
Yeah,
for.
so absolutely. Follow Dope Black Dads on Instagram, Facebook, and all those wonderful platforms. And I think the actual brand Dope Black Dads is everywhere at the moment. I tend to kind of focus just on Instagram, so I'm at Marcus_Ramtohul. Stuff I've got coming up, lots more Dope Black Dads podcasts, which is really fun because I get to be you, Jada. I get to be the person asking all the questions and finding out cool stuff about people, which is the privilege you have as a presenter as well if you're in that sort of field. So definitely check out the podcast. You can find my episodes at marcusramtohul.com/podcast. And other stuff I've got coming up, well, I've got some cool stuff coming up that I can't tell you about. But
share a little exclusive with us. Go on.
I think I've signed far too many NDAs. But there's some exciting stuff coming up next year, which very excited about. And I guess if you want to be the first to know about that, you'll just have to make sure you're following me on the socials, Marcus_Ramtohul.
Oh man, failed to secure the exclusive. I'm gonna get fired now.
So I think it's worth pointing out before we end. I had a similar conversation with Babatunde Aleshe when I interviewed him for the Dope Black Dads podcast, and he was like, oh yeah, I've got something coming up, I can't tell you what it is, and he wouldn't tell me. And then a few weeks ago we found out he was going into I'm a Celebrity and he was going to be in the jungle, and I was like, oh
my god.
Man, if only I'd have got it out of him.
Yeah, imagine if that slipped out. Oh my god. Well, Marcus, it's been so great chatting to you, and I'm gonna be checking out your podcast as well. So everybody definitely do, and yeah, maybe come back sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. It'd be great.
Because so many questions I never got to ask you, but yeah, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.